Well, it's the season of festivities, and before we start today's bulletin, this year's Eid celebrations are seeing not one but 2 days of festivities. There's a split in Eid celebrations this year. Kerala is celebrating today, while the rest of India waits for just another day longer. Now, the reason for this is the sighting of the moon. Eid ul-Fitr, after all, is declared only on the sighting of the crescent moon, and religious authorities in Kerala have confirmed the sighting on Thursday evening itself, thereby allowing celebrations to begin today. This is also the case in most parts of southern Tamil Nadu as well as southern Karnataka, including towns like Coimbatore, Madurai and Mangaluru, where Eid celebrations have in fact already begun. In most other parts of the country, the moon has not yet been sighted, and that means fasting will continue for one more day, with Eid all set to be celebrated tomorrow instead. Moving on, Andhra Pradesh has emerged as the top performing state in the country when it comes to consumer justice delivery. This according to a finding from the Consumer Justice Report of 2026. Now, the study conducted by the India Justice Report Initiative, a Tata Trusts-backed nationwide effort to assess the performance of justice delivery systems across India. And as per the report itself, Andhra ranks first among 19 large and mid-sized states as part of the study, driven by strong institutional capacity and efficiency in handling cases. Now, between 2020 and 2024, Andhra Pradesh cleared nearly 93% of consumer cases, one of the highest disposal case rates across the country, and this while also keeping long pending cases to an absolute minimum. Karnataka, meanwhile, ranks number 4, placing it firmly among the top performing states. Bengaluru, in particular, has emerged as a strong urban performer, although concerns remain around staffing gaps and slowing disposal rates. Now, looking at the rest of the southern pack, Tamil Nadu comes in at a number 11, indicating relatively stronger consumer redressal systems in the state, while Kerala follows Tamil Nadu, reflecting a more moderate performance when it comes to consumer dispute resolution. At the other end of the spectrum is Telangana, which ranks last among the 19 states, despite improving its case clearance rate itself. So, structural gaps, including vacancies, limited district commissions and missing data, have in fact dragged down Telangana's overall score. Now, shifting focus to the ongoing coverage of the LPG crisis as shortages continue to plague the country, restaurants in Chennai are staring at an unprecedented tipping point. Multiple voices from the industry have said that kitchens are in fact struggling to stay warm, menus are shrinking, and in many cases, shutters have already come down. In an exclusive conversation with ET Now, Japtej Aluwalia of Bond Restaurants and a managing committee member of the National Restaurants Association of India told me that the situation has already turned critical, with supplies dropping to a fraction of daily requirements. Further, with no clarity or transparency on LPG allocation, he added that the city's restaurants were only days away from adding an LPG surcharge on customers' dining bills. Here's a slice of that conversation.
I think this problem started happening for the last couple of weeks now. 10 days ago is when this actually started escalating to a large extent, where it mattered to us and how we were handling this. For us, in my own restaurants, we are almost 80% dependent on LPG to cook our dishes, to cook our food. So for us, it's been a rough 10 days. Like you said, you're in my new restaurant. There were other things that we would like to be handling when you open a new restaurant, then battling the issues which are sort of unforeseen in this nature. So it is something that we are grappling for the last 10 days, and the situation is quite grim. In Chennai per se, supply has been completely dry for the last 2 weeks. I would say we are getting supply on a day-to-day basis, and that too only 10-15% of what we would normally get. So the situation is quite dire. It is something that needs to change very quickly if the restaurants have to remain open. I know for a fact, at least within my friend circle of restaurateurs, there are at least 4 or 5 of them who have shut down the restaurants because there's no other option. They're completely dependent on gas. So the situation is quite bad and dire at this point in time.
Right. And of course, the fact remains that even as both centre and state have worked out a formula of rationing LPG, the reality on the ground, Japtej, you'd say, is vastly different from what it is on paper. I know for a fact that, let's say in Delhi, for instance, 42% of daily requirements of restaurants, the government said, will be met through the new rationing system. But many restaurateurs tell me that the ground reality is vastly different, and several restaurateurs are not even getting 20% of what their daily requirement would be. What is the problem really with regard to rationing of LPGs, and why is what is mentioned on paper not manifesting on the ground?
So this is an evolving picture. The notification which you're, I think, referring to came about 1 week ago when the government had said that overall from the usage of commercial LPG cylinders, 20% is what will be allocated towards commercial use. We also fall under commercial use, and then within that 20%, different states have different allocation methods. Delhi, because of the capital, a large part of the ecosystem there has piped gas. So in piped gas, there is not that much problem, at least at this point in time, from a PNG point of view. So if Delhi is getting 42% of its allocation, it is I would say 50-60% of their overall requirement. But in cities like Chennai, which do not have any piped gas at all, and we are fully dependent on LPG cylinders, the rationing is just about 8-10% of our overall requirement at this point in time. Again, this is a matter of supply issues. We all acknowledge that and understand that. But for us, the challenge is that there is confusion at the allocation level. If the government has stated that 40% is going to be allocated for restaurants, there's no way for us to know whether that is happening or no. But if I have to say about my own restaurants, we run 8 restaurants in Chennai. My daily requirement is between 20 and 22 cylinders. I'm getting 4 or 5. So that's only 15-16% of my overall requirement and my needs. So I cannot run with 4-5 as against the requirement of 20-25. So the situation is quite grim and quite bad at this point in time.
Right. And even as we speak, of course, the Karnataka Chief Minister Siddharamaiah has written to the Union Petroleum Ministry with regard to releasing more cylinder supplies for both restaurants as well as other commercial establishments. Auto LPG as well has been under the focus too. Does it all boil down to definitions really? While a number of cylinders have been set aside for commercial use, the fact is they'll always have to be spread between hostels, hospitals, educational institutes and restaurants. Would restaurants if restaurants were to be looked at as essential service providers, do you feel the formula change that may happen by way of the redefinition could perhaps help more?
Yeah, that is definitely an argument to make. Again, restaurants are of different nature. There are a lot of restaurants which are at the lower end of the segment where people go in for a daily meal. And of course, those restaurants are very badly affected. Maybe perhaps we might not be categorized as a restaurant where you would come on a daily basis to eat. But restaurants, by and large, during COVID as well, were also categorized as essential services. If you for example, there are 10 flyovers being built in Chennai and there is X amount of labor working on those flyovers. They go to the local cart and the local restaurant down the road for their daily meals. Those restaurants have shut. Those carts have shut. So actually, we are an essential service in that sense, wherein we are providing food to a large number of people on a day-to-day basis. So we understand that there is a shortage in supply itself at the supply level, but if there was a better allocation and a better methodology which is clear and transparent, we can also then make decisions accordingly and pivot our operations. While we are doing that proactively and we are changing a few dishes and sort of switching to electric wherever is possible, but for us the problem is that there is no clarity in communication and transparency in distribution. So that's a big challenge at this point in time.
Speaking of changing dishes, I can see that a lot of what is on our table, for instance, is food that does not require a lot of LPG to prepare. Has that pretty much been the order of the day in terms of menus? Have you been looking at dishes that you can get around without too much gas? From a strategic F&B menu standpoint, what have been some of the changes you've had? No option but to wrangle in to make do with the present situation.
Last week, my thought process was that I think situation will get better this week. But given the current escalations that is happening in the war, we are preparing for the worst. So we feel that this situation is going to last for another perhaps perhaps a month. So we are taking a lot of proactive steps in terms of tweaking our menus to some extent as much as possible. Not using equipment which guzzle a lot of gas. We are turning off those equipment and making those particular dishes not available. We have to make those steps if we want to remain open. For us, our priority at this point in time is to somehow manage the situation for the next 3-4 weeks, remain open. Of course, we know that our numbers and our losses are going to be there, but our endeavor and focus is that we remain open in some way or the other by tweaking our menu, by changing a few dishes, using electrical equipment wherever is possible, swapping to electrical equipment wherever is possible. But again, that's easier said than done. Inductions are sold out, firewood is sold out. You can't get wood anywhere now. So there are sort of multiplier challenges by this one challenge that has arrived. So the situation, at least we feel, is going to remain tense and bad for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and we're preparing for the worst.
So what this means is no pizza, no grills, no steak. Has it come down to that? More sushi, more salad? How has that menu offering changed in the last couple of weeks?
Yes, you're right. It has boiled down to that. So we run a restaurant called Jolly Indian. We are not serving any parotas or dosas, which is obviously a staple for Chennai. So we've turned off that equipment. I also run a brand called Double Roti, where we sell some great pizzas. Again, that's sort of that's been turned off. So we are making those shifts and those changes because these are at least these are in our hand and in our control. So we are trying to control whatever we can to mitigate this as much as possible, and of course sensitizing the team to save and conserve energy as much as possible.
I also have to ask you, you mentioned firewood as well as induction. Now, there's a bit of a problem that we're dealing with here at the restaurant business. One is, of course, while some restaurants have pivoted to induction stovetops and many others to firewood, many also say that the infrastructure isn't back-ended enough to actually have induction as a normal infrastructural fit for multiple restaurants, and that's perhaps coming in the way of this proposed pivot. And firewood is not available either. So would you say that the industry right now is pretty much stuck between a rock and a hard place, given these infrastructural bottlenecks that have also emerged in the recent past?
I mean, you're right. I'm actually somebody who's very bullish about the food and beverage industry in our country, given where we are from a GDP point of view. Going forward, I will certainly keep this in mind that, whenever we are opening our next restaurant, we mitigate this and sort of build it from a point of view wherein electrical infrastructure can support the restaurant and we don't have these issues. At this point in time, you're right, firewood is not available, inductions are not available. And when you're operating a restaurant of a certain size and scale, it's not simple to just swap an equipment or plug in a regular induction which you use at home and start making dishes. It's infrastructure-wise, it does not support it. So we are facing that challenge across our formats. Wherever there was a possibility of switching to electric, for example, in our cafe format, we have started making our pastas on an induction cooker, because you can actually make a pasta on an induction cooker instead of gas. So wherever it is possible, we are going to be making that change. But more importantly, going forward, we will now look at building kitchens which are supported by electric equipment rather than gas, because this is a lesson learned. You don't know what is this can occur again. So we will make that change.
And of course, hedging against risks at what is largely an uncertain time geopolitically might well be the wise thing to do. Where does this take you from here, Japtej? I know for a fact that restaurateurs in Kerala have said that they will start going on strike from the 23rd of March onwards until the situation eases out, or that supplies are more streamlined in favor of commercial establishments too. I know for a fact that some associations in Tamil Nadu have met the government to bring some semblance of relief. I don't know what's come off that. There are, of course, oral promises that have been made. But as a business and as an industry, where do you go from here? And what's the answer to your problems at this time and place?
So I'm also a managing committee member of NRAI, and I think our association has been extremely vocal about how grim the situation is. I mean, you have to understand, restaurants anyways is a very high failure rate business. Out of 10 restaurants which open in a year, 7 shut in the first 3 years itself. So it's a very high mortality business any which ways. Any sort of impact wherein you're not able to sell your product itself will have a cascading effect on smaller players for sure. Luckily, we are, I would say, decently capitalized to survive this, but a lot of restaurants will not be able to survive this tremor. So from an industry outlook, the situation is quite bad. Yesterday, in the NRI groups, we also came to know that the Karnataka Association has taken the government to court, saying that you have to increase your quota of supply to restaurants, because so many darshanis which are operating in Bangalore, which serve the masses over there, are not able to operate. So situation is definitely bad. We feel we will bounce back like how we did in COVID as well. But COVID was different. There the problem was we were able to make our product and not able to serve it. Here we are not able to make our product itself. There is demand. You can see we are in a restaurant during lunchtime and we have decent amount of people coming and dining. So we will bounce back for sure. But how many people will be able to take this shock? That's the time will tell. I feel there will be a fair amount of casualties.
Before we end, let me ask you, given the kind of dire and grim situation we're in, what impact has your balance sheet felt by way of this itself? I know for a fact that prices have gone up, even as there's been also allegations that oil companies are capitalizing on the shortage in general and looking at predatory pricing in a sense. How bad is the hit on the balance sheet really, Japtej?
It's an open secret that gas prices have been has skyrocketed. There is, of course, there are people who are getting gas at maybe 2x, 3x the price that they were normally getting at. We are, I guess, a week away from having some sort of a surcharge on our billing, on our bills, which will have some sort of a surcharge. You have to understand, 15 to 20% of the cost of a particular dish is from the energy that it consumes. So if that input cost of 15% has gone up by 300%, there is no way we can absorb all that cost. So from a balance sheet point of view, yes, there will definitely be a hit. It will slow down our rollout plan of new restaurants or new locations. But our priority at this point in time is to tide this wave, remain open as much as possible, and control what is in our hands, and hoping that the situation gets better in the next couple of weeks or so.
Well, one can only hope against hope that the situation with regard to cooking fuel eases out and restaurants and eateries get back on their feet. But on that note, we will slip into a short break, but South Central continues on the other side of this commercial break. Keep staying tuned to ET Now.
India's growth story is no longer.
Second, politically, those who are doing it will say it is welfare, and those who are not doing it or against it will call it freebie. So, as I've said earlier, one man's social welfare is another man's freebie. The famous Prime Minister who said everything is Revdi when it was done by others. His party and he himself has gone to Madhya Pradesh and Bihar and promised and handed out all kinds of money, especially around the time of elections in Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh and Bihar. So, there's a lot of hypocrisy, right? When you do it, it's considered welfare spending. When I do it, it's not.
And sticking with more news on state spending, Telangana has announced a massive 3.24 lakh crore rupee budget for FY27, signaling a strong push on welfare even as it tries to balance growth priorities. Now, the state's budget this year focuses heavily on sectors like agriculture, healthcare, education and welfare schemes, with continued flagship funding for programs aimed at farmers, women and rural communities. Allocations for infrastructure and transport too have been enhanced, and in an attempt to keep investment momentum going. Now, the big ticket budget allocation comes even as experts in industry bodies have been calling for higher capex in the state and more incentives for businesses and MSMEs to drive long-term growth. What has raised eyebrows, however, is big ticket allocation this year, even as the state has been walking a tightrope of sorts between welfare commitments and fiscal discipline while battling rising debt levels. With that, we've come to the end of this bulletin of South Central. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week with more news and updates from the region. You have a great weekend. For the moment, it's goodbye from us.